What is up, my friends? The Devy Dose is back in the house. Week 4, college football. Lots of good stuff going on. Kyle, how you feeling, man?
Tired. My voice is shot. I've been at a music festival for the past weekend and screamed all night long last night to good old Zach Bryan. So definitely
Yeah,
don't have like a whole octave of my voice that I usually am able to use.
can I just say I'm impressed with the degree to which you've gone full Emperor mode in your basement. On the
I'm
camera,
not.
you're just
I'm not
for
in my
those of you
basement.
listening.
I don't have a big enough apartment to have a basement.
So for those of you that are listening and not watching, Kyle's screen is just black, except his headphones that are glowing and his white face. It's impressive. You're like the picture of an internet troll right now, and it's great.
The light was overwhelming me. Okay. I feel like the Kermit the Frog meme. Them.
Oh, all right, man. We got a lot of fun stuff to talk about. A lot of good info for you guys. Yet another week of football. Lots of ups and unfortunately lots of downs. They're going to impact our teams as we kind of get into the middle of the season. And really, you're already in C2C in CFF. You're kind of pushing it in for the ship already. It's happened in my leagues. The arms races began last week. I tried to get ahead of them, get some guys cheap, but this week we had explosions of trades. Guys trying to get in the mix or get on top of the pig pile. So it's just an important time in the season. If you wait, you're going to be too late. So, and you want to launch into top performers here, Kyle?
Let's go for it. If I can get everything to show up on my screen at the same time. All right, off the bat, at quarterback, Cameron Ward, Washington State, leads the Cougars to a huge win against 18th ranked Oregon State. He goes 28 for 34 for 404 yards and 4 touchdowns, adds 9 carries for 14 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Big output from him propelled his team to a huge win as they're now the champions of the Pac-2. And then
we're gonna lead right into this next guy with a little bit of highlight film from Mr. Ashton Gianti from Boise State, who put himself up with some numbers up. 23 carries, 205 yards, 2 tutties, and then another 4 and 49 in the air. This is a guy that you've been really high on. The C2C guys have been really high on. Essentially, like a high-level P5 talent playing at a G5 level. And
the thing about Jaunty is he didn't start playing football till his junior year in high school, so just nobody knew about him. But he's a heck of an athlete and a heck of a running back.
Yeah, it's becoming an excellent football player for sure. So we're gonna let those highlights roll for your eyeball enjoyment as we blast through the last of the top performers. We have LeJohntay Wester, FAU, 13 catches, 137, 1.
Casey Thompson goes down for the season last week, and we kind of talked about it on a Thursday show about whether or not we could trust LeJohntay Wester without Casey Thompson. And it seems that we can. He's still being a target hog in this offense and is still going to be the guy. And it really doesn't seem to matter who the quarterback is because he's not getting downfield targets. He's getting short targets. And whoever it is, Daniel Richardson or whatever, they can throw the ball 5 yards. They're in the college football for a reason. So
yeah, and this is one of those QB1 goes down, QB2 hyper targets the wide receiver 1.
He was already hyper targeted before, but
yeah.
And
then this one we all saw coming, but Mr. Dallin Hulk, CSU, then 112 and 1, and he has been lighting it up
Yeah, I think that made him the tight end 2 on the week. The tight end 1 from this week we'll mention a little later during breakouts and busts. So I figured why not have the tight end 2 in top performers.
Love it. What else you got?
Got Cameron Scatabo, the JUCO running back turned Arizona State running back. 20 carries, 111 yards, and a touchdown. 4 receptions, 79 yards, and a touchdown. 42 yards passing, and a 2-point conversion. Scatabo did just about everything you can do in a football game for Arizona State this week. So props to him, top performer for this week.
Yeah, and a guy that there was a lot of high hopes for, but that hasn't exactly lived up to them before this game. So interested to see if this is the sign of more to come or just kind of a fluke.
I bet it's probably a sign of more to come. I mean, Tevin White hasn't necessarily been involved either. So I think if the offense can hum at all, it'll be through Scatabo, and the issue is the rest of the offense is just really bad. So some weeks they're just not going to find the end zone easily.
Yeah.
Our next top performer is Xavier Legette, the South Carolina wide receiver who has been filling in for the injured Antoine Wells over the last few weeks. He finished this week with 5 receptions, 189 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Huge performance for him. Big play threat for sure.
Love it. I guess bringing up the rear, Brendan Rice from USC. Eventually, one of the USC wide receivers had to go off, but unfortunately, it's not the one that most of us rostered for CFF purposes. You know what? He went off a little bit towards the end of last year as well. I wouldn't be shocked if he's more the guy there than the other guys, but I don't know. Still, not that interested in a Lincoln Riley wide receiver for the purposes of college fantasy football. Certainly,
unless they're the best.
Yeah, unless they have like the head and shoulders above the rest of the field, I feel like, which I don't think anyone else there is. I think that's the problem.
Yet. Yeah.
True. Could happen. It could happen.
Moving on. We got a new segment this week. I figured it's just important to start bringing them up because they are starting to hit our rosters pretty hard and they do have some impact. And those are injuries. Very sad to hear about, to talk about, but important to your fantasy teams. Really the only fantasy relevant guy this week who's now out for the season is Wisconsin running back Chez Malusi. Went down with a leg injury this week. Pretty brutal. I watched that one on TV and did not like seeing it twice. So big for Braylon Allen. Seems like he's going to have to take over the lion's share of the work, and we'll see what he can do with that.
Yeah, I almost feel like they're going to have someone else that might step up a little bit too. I don't know who else is there really, though. That would be interesting.
That's the issue. Yeah.
Tyler Shuck, broken fibula, likely done for the season. Did you watch that one too?
I did not, but I mean, Baron Morton will obviously come in for him. He's been a quarterback for Texas Tech over the last 2 years. He
had some good games last year, but
he had one good game. But there's potential there. There always has been. He's just never put it on the field in college. They play Houston this week, who's one of the worst pass defenses in the country. So we'll see if Morton can put it together in his first start. And if not, I don't think there's any reason to be looking at him for CFF.
Yeah. Gage Larvadane of Ohio suffering a blip in his campaign for wide receiver 1 overall. Missed most of the game. Questionable for next week.
I haven't been able to figure out what that one was. I didn't watch it, so
info.
I'm not sure. But lots of wide receivers this week who have been big scorers for CFF. Another one is Lincoln Victor, who stopped playing after a hand injury and then came out of the tunnel on crutches.
I didn't hear the crutches thing. That sucks.
Yeah, obviously he got a leg injury earlier and then went into the medical tent for a hand injury, and they figured that leg was worse, the ankle. So he's day to day now. We'll see if he can come back. He didn't record a stat in this week's game, so yeah, lots of guys. We got to see who's going to fill in for him if he misses a couple of weeks. So we'll talk about that later in the show.
Hit that in a few. These guys hurt me a little bit, at least. Michael Wiley, I've been starting everywhere all season because he's had an awesome floor. Just not a stat recorded, like one carry or something. No news on
it was
the
like
injury.
2 carries for 8 yards.
Yeah, no news. And then Jaden DeLora, his quarterback at Arizona, both injured, both big question marks for your teams.
Yeah, DeLora played most of the game, still put up a semi-respectable stat line, and then got hurt in the early in the fourth, I think. But Noah Fafita, the redshirt freshman, will be the backup there if DeLora misses time. He's pretty interesting. He's been a spring camp guy for 2 seasons now, so that could be interesting.
It could be not that bad for the receiving options. I feel like there. DeQuan Finn, this one hurts too. I've got him all over. Shoulder injury, questionable for the next game. At least it's not, 4 to 6 weeks.
Yeah, definitely seems like that he went down and that offense just ran the ball more. So no trust in the backup quarterback there, but we'll talk about some running back options there later on. Connor Wegman, the Texas A&M quarterback, went down with an ankle injury. He's questionable for this week. Max Johnson filled in pretty admirably, threw a couple touchdowns, threw one to his brother at tight end. So that was fun to see. But we are both pretty excited about Wegman, so we hope that he can come back. Xavier Weaver, the other big CFF wide receiver to go down this week, was injured versus Oregon. Not really sure what it was. I didn't see it, but sounds like he could probably play next week against USC. Hopefully for Colorado's sake, he is able to go because already down Travis Hunter, being with Jimmy Horn and Michael Harrison as your top receiving threats. Not going to go very well, especially when you have to keep up with Caleb Williams. Antoine Wells, the South Carolina wide receiver, he's been out for most of the season now. He is most likely not going to come back this week, but things are progressing.
So Wells has recorded snaps in a couple of the recent games.
Has he?
Yeah, I was looking at it. September 16th, 2 targets. September 9th, 2 targets. Did he just get
but he missed last week.
He missed this week, but is Leggett just better? I feel like it's probably like nagging injury, trying to play through it, not able to really perform.
Yeah. I thought, because he was hurt over the offseason, wasn't he?
Noah Whittington, foot injury.
That's a new one.
I don't think I care. Yeah, I don't think. Do I care for fantasy? I don't care for fantasy.
I have him in a 2014 best ball league, and I care deeply because he gets like 12 points a game,
which is helpful in that format, but not in any other. Jalen McMillan did not play this weekend.
I think the thing you care about for Whittington is Jordan James.
Very relevant
as a being able to prove himself type for C2C.
He was active this week. I don't think it was anything to write home about, but I did notice
say he had like 15 fantasy points, scored a touchdown probably.
I'll tell you right now, 7 attempts, 54 yards, and a tutty, 12.9. But very efficient for sure. All right, a couple of guys here. JJ McAfee, Jalen White, both up in the air. Raheem Sanders could be back. Cam Rising expected to make his season debut.
Of course, Rising was expected to make his season debut last weekend, and that didn't happen, and was dressed but didn't play. So, seems to be progressing. They're still splitting snaps this week between him and Johnson, so we'll see if he's able to go. That will move us to our breakouts and busts. And our first breakout was the biggest performance of the week at any position. That is DJ Giddens, the Kansas State running back. 30 carries, 207 yards, and 4 touchdowns. Added 8 receptions for 86 yards. Anytime a running back gets 38 touches, that's definitely something to look at. And this came in a game for Kansas State where Trayshawn Ward, the other RB1 there, was out. So Giddens takes the lion's share without him there. Obviously, they don't seem to trust anybody else on the roster. So if Ward were to miss more time, I think Giddens definitely has it in him to do it again. Obviously not probably 38 touches, but probably in the 20-plus range, which is plenty in terms of a running back. And I think this also gives a platform for Giddens to take more of an RB1A role, because Trayshawn Ward has not been efficient this season, and Giddens, I believe, is averaging over 6 yards a carry. So,
yeah, Giddens had some voices calling for him to be the RB1 coming into the season. I saw him as a cheap alternative, just never quite got there in my drafts. Didn't really care that much about the K-State running back, but certainly was on my radar. Certainly a guy that looks like you could, maybe work him into your rosters now. And I don't think he is that widely owned.
No, I think it's like 16%.
He's about half my leagues. He's available. So,
I mean, I think you should be interested in the K-State running back. I mean, Deuce Vaughn was incredible for what, like 2-3 years.
So. That was the theory coming into the season, and yet it's just been kind of a work share, and no one really breaking out, and they both have been startable, but like flex, that's it, So
but combine that running back share is something like 30-40 touches a game. So if one guy starts taking like 70% instead of 50%, that's definitely going to make a difference. They'll have 20 to 25 touches a game, which is pretty good.
Yeah, so this guy is a lot more interesting to me. Kevin Concepcion, wide receiver, true freshman from NC State. And he's a guy that, like Kevin Coleman and a couple other people have been mentioning over and over again, kind of a steady drumbeat there. This week, he had himself a game, 6 catches, 10 targets, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns, 48-yard reception in there. He's a kid that's been involved really since week 1. Looks like he had
11 targets in week 2 against Notre Dame.
Yeah,
7 in week 3.
7 for 62 in week 3, right? I mean, so he's a guy that looks like he's building himself a resume. Doesn't necessarily have the measurables that makes us super excited about a Devy guy, but we're seeing the trend of these smaller, agile, technician type receivers really getting a lot of traction and taking off. And that's his mold, 5'11", 185 pounds. But yeah, definitely a guy to be watching for. And he's still widely available pretty much everywhere. Definitely going to talk about him in our waivers column for sure.
A lot of the conversation about Concepcion is this offseason has been he can break out as a true freshman because the North Carolina State wide receiver room is horrible. And that's exactly what's happening here. So
yeah, kind of like the same thing as Eric Singleton at Georgia Tech, right?
Yeah, and like that one guy at West Virginia, I can't remember his name anymore, but yeah.
So my guy here. You want to talk about my guy, Kevin? Kyle?
No, you can talk about your guy. He's on my teams.
And your teams, I know. So Luke Haas is a guy that I was kind of hyping a little bit in the offseason, just was getting work in the spring for Arkansas, supplanting guys that were his seniors on the team that had a lot more reps in college that were getting hyped from other sources. But really, from the spring game on, the Arkansas coaching staff was saying this kid was going to be a starter and do things. And he has done things pretty much every week, and then really kind of dropped bombs this week for the second time of his young career. And this is Luke Haas of Arkansas. This week was 6 for 116 and 2. Last week, he actually had a mini breakout, four catches, 78 yards, and 1. It looks like this is happening. This was against LSU, too. This wasn't against like a G5 team or like West Virginia or something. This was him blowing up in a major way against high-level SEC competition.
Yeah. I mean, it's another one where the case is a little similar. I mean, they don't have a ton of guys who are SEC caliber talents at the receiver positions. So he definitely can step into a bigger role there as the season progresses, I think.
Yeah, I just like, too. It's not like he's getting 3 catches for 12 yards. Like, clearly an explosive player, clearly has earned the trust of his quarterback and a high-level role on the team already. And he's a kid that came in with real size and measurables. So I don't know how fast he is, which is a factor, obviously, in NFL projection, but you got to like what we've seen so far.
Yeah, tight ends don't really run track, but the general consensus out of high school was that he was a pretty fast guy, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
His ADOT right now is 11.6 yards downfield, too, which is really high for a tight end.
Yeah. Nice.
Next guy is Penny Boone, the Toledo running back. As I mentioned, after DeQuan Finn went down, the Rockets ran the ball a lot and ran all over Western Michigan. And Penny Boone was the reason why. I mean, 24 carries, 211 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He was a guy a lot of people were excited about last year going to Toledo because he was a former 4-star recruit who went to Maryland, was pretty all right at Maryland, like probably the third option, but was semi-efficient, and then transferred down, but didn't win the job in his first year at Toledo. Seems to have won the job now, and Toledo's going to run the ball, and MAC defenses aren't going to be able to stop it. So I think Penny Boone is a very interesting breakout this week. I would expect like 20 touches a game going forward because it's not like he's been bad before this week too. He's, I believe, averaging close to like 18, 20 fantasy points a game. So very excited for Penny Boone for the rest of the way.
Yeah, I just have a hard time with guys like this because I wanted him to be a thing last year, just the size, athleticism at size, but maybe it's finally happening. Maybe this is one of those things where we've just been early on him.
Yeah, 9 attempts against Illinois, 6 attempts against Texas Southern, but they absolutely blew him out. 13 attempts against San Jose State in week 3, which he turned into 123 yards. And then this week, 24 attempts, which he turned into 211 yards. So 9.5 and 8.8 yards per carry in the last 2 weeks. So if you're going to do that, coaching staff is going to have to give you the ball. So
force them to let you work, get some work. So this guy's interesting, I think, in a few different ways. And this is Jalen Reisner of Arkansas State. And what was the quote? G5 Kyler Murray?
Yeah,
that
Nate Marquise.
Yeah. I mean, the kid looks freaking fast. So yeah. He's 11 for 21 passing for 233 and 3 in an interception, and then another 17, 97, and 2 touchdowns on the ground. So a decent performance passing, but really just like shredding the opposition on the ground. Who's that against?
Southern Miss.
So not a good team, but
that's who he's going to play against all year. Sun Belt teams. Yeah. So, I mean, any quarterback who gets 17 carries in a game is going to have a floor. I mean, it's easier to run from the quarterback position. So if you're getting like 20 yards or 20 carries a game, you'll probably get close to 100 every week in terms of yardage. And that's 10 fantasy points that other quarterbacks aren't getting off the bat. So at that point, the passing numbers are just icing, right? Like 3 passing touchdowns. That's just icing. So I think Raynor is super interesting if he can keep this job. JT Shrout is injured, and he hasn't been good before this week, but he has like a connection with Butch Jones, so we'll see if Butch wants to go back to Raynor or not. But I think Butch Jones is coaching for his job at this point, so Jalen Raynor is going to have to stay in the game if he's going to lead him.
Tough to put that kid back on the bench, man. Just like he's the kind of kid that's going to get butts and seats and sell tickets, you know?
Yeah. He's also the kind of kid who's going to transfer to the Power 5 next year.
Yeah, definitely. But like you gotta play the kid while he's there. So the next guy is Anthony Coliandra, we talked about a little bit last week, and I believe Kyle dropped Malik Washington as a guy to pick up in our waiver column. And oh boy, do you wish you did that now. 13 targets, 10 catches, 170 yards, and 2. And this isn't an isolated performance. I feel like Washington's one of those guys that we've been looking at every week on the waiver wire being like, oh, that's just a week. Oh, that's just a week.
Yeah.
And yet,
the thing is, like, Virginia started out with Tony Muskett. He got injured, and they went to Calandria. And Washington has been Calandria's number one guy. He has not been the number one guy for Muskett, and that's kind of been the issue. Is like, is Malachi Fields actually better, and is Calandria going to figure that out, or is this just like the connection between these two is too high?
Yeah, we're rolling some Malik Washington highlights from Northwestern last year. Where I actually rostered him in one of those super deep leagues or just desperate. And he was good last year for Northwestern. They just didn't throw the ball much because their quarterback room was pure suck. But he's a good player, I think. Certainly capable of performing consistently if he gets the opportunity.
Yeah, and Calandria is going to throw the ball deep. So I have some Anthony Calandria stats for you because I think this dude is fascinating. True freshman in this Virginia offense. 12.9 ADOT, highest in the NCAA. 9 yards per attempt, 15th in the NCAA. 7 big-time throws, which puts him in the top 30. And 11 turnover-worthy throws, which is the third most in college football. This man is playing as a true freshman and playing with like absolute disregard and just absolutely gunslinging, which I love. It's so fun to watch. He just loves throwing it deep, and he'll do that until it kills him. So excited for him if he can, keep the job for the rest of the year once Muskett gets back, because he's fun to watch. So. And he's a true freshman, so he can clean up those, hopefully, and he'll still have that arm.
Yeah, I think he I don't know, man. I think he's one of those guys that is making an impact. Like, how do you take him out of the game? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Definitely making the explosive plays. He needs to cut down on the ones that give the ball to the other team.
So you had one more here if you want to move on there.
Yeah, so we talked about Lincoln Victor getting hurt last week, so Washington State needs some wide receivers to step up. There were two guys that stepped up. It was Josh Kelly, the Fresno State transfer, and the other guy that we knew about already. Kyle Williams, the UNLV transfer. Both had over 150 yards, but Josh Kelly had 3 touchdowns. I think
Josh Kelly's got the slot role, right?
No. Actually, Josh Kelly is the outside guy, and he's the outside guy even when Victor's healthy. And he's been pretty all right when Victor's healthy, like decent enough. And definitely seems that him and Cam Ward just have some connection. So I think I'm more interested in Josh Kelly. Like, yes, this Ben Arbuckle offense is like super concentrated to the slot typically, but we've seen in this offense when necessary, when the outside receiver is the best guy, he's going to get the ball. Like, you think back to Western Kentucky, like, 3 years ago when Jarrett Stearns was the guy. When Mitchell Tinsley was there, Mitchell Tinsley was a top 12 wide receiver on the outside too. Like, you can still make a living on the outside. You think to like Texas Tech with Kitley last year and going into this year, like Jaron Bradley has been probably the highest performing wide receiver in that room, and he's plays basically completely on the outside.
Yeah. Yeah, and looking at Kelly's game logs, I mean, he's been good all season. The only game he's had below 18 points was against Wisconsin. The team got swallowed up a little bit. Actually,
18
no,
points?
Below 18. Everything else has
yeah.
been 22.7 week 1, 18 points week 3, and then this game, obviously, in week 4 for 41 points. So he was already good, but yeah, man, maybe without Victor, he turns into the behemoth that you need him to be.
Yeah, but like you said, even if Victor is back and he's getting 18 points a game, I'll take that too. So
right.
I think I'd rather have him than Kyle Williams. I think Kyle Williams is like strictly a Victor out play. And I think if you want the cheap option, you can go to the freshman Carlos Hernandez, who I think will step into that slot role. He's been playing the second most slot snaps on the team behind Victor, so I think you can probably get him for 0 fab and an unlimited waiver run. So
Kyle Williams ain't been bad either, man. He hasn't had a game below 12 points, including the Wisconsin game.
Yeah,
so
this team's going to air it out. Everybody's going to be
all of them
involved,
are startable. But obviously, if you're trying to win the CFF side, you really need to be pushing for that 20-plus point per game at every single position. So, if you're in a bigger league or the best ball, yeah, sure, like these guys are more useful. But yeah, it sounds like Kelly is your man. All right, I had 2 more people to drop quickly here before you move on. Jonathan Brooks. Obviously, we knew he was the starter. We knew he was pretty good, but he just hasn't been great for fantasy until these past couple of weeks. And then now he has put up 2 over 100-yard performances, a couple of tutties this week, looking like a guy that you can start on your fantasy team, which I've been kind of waiting to see. These games are against Baylor and Wyoming, granted, but they're not the only easy games he's going to have. He's going to have Houston later, BYU, and then he's got a good playoff schedule. TCU, Iowa State, Texas Tech. So he might be a guy to start working into your lineup. Just probably not the next couple of weeks. He's got Oklahoma and Kentucky. And then Rodney Hammond, who the much maligned, who has damaged every C2C team I have this year by just being in a committee. 14 for 83-1, another 5 targets, 3 catches, 11 yards. Not a devastator game, but the beats were saying that he is going to be the lead back moving forward. And that was a decent game. That was like 18 points or something. So if he's going to get this kind of volume steadily, then he might be the guy that we wanted him to be coming into the season.
Be 18.4, I think. So
yeah, this game. And he's a good player. He looked good last year. I thought he was better than Izzy. So
that's
cool.
Okay. I disagree, but
I don't think Izzy's that good. Anyways, get some busts. Jimmy Horn. Can we get the bust? Jimmy Horn. 1 catch, -4 yards.
Yep.
That sounds not good. Arcus Cooper, 1.6 fantasy points. And you had pointed out that he's mostly sucked this year, but he was good last week. So I kind of thought, hey, they worked it out. He's going to be playable. Nope. Cooper.
Who was this against this week?
I think it was a FCS team.
That's really bad.
Oh, no. Sorry. Last week this was Georgia Southern. Last week was In-State, Indiana State.
Yeah.
Yeah. This week was Georgia Southern, but still bad, right?
They lost this game 40-3. Pretty clear why he didn't get work.
Because
apparently he's not a pass catcher and coming from behind, which is going to kill you.
Yeah, the first 2 games were Kentucky and UGA. So I was like, all right, that's fine. And then he comes up against this FBS team, drops a 24-point performance, 177 yards. You think the fact pattern is that he might be startable. I don't know. I ain't dropping him yet, but he can stay on my bench. Roman Henby, 2.6 fantasy points.
Yeah, tough week for Hemby stockholders.
No injury.
I don't
And someone
think
else got the work,
so.
right?
Yeah, and it's been that way for the last 2 weeks. They've been really going into a committee. I think not this week, but last week he had like 10 or 12 carries, and the guy behind him had like 9, and there's another guy with like 7. So, not the RB1 we wanted to see in Maryland is Roman Hemby. So, pretty disappointing. I don't think he's going to separate himself, especially if he's getting 12 carries or 12 yards on 10 carries. So I think this is probably get more and more committee and more gross for those of us rostering Hemby. So not excited about that.
And then this one also hurt. Will Shepard, 10 targets. Like to see that. 2 receptions. Don't like that. Don't like that.
For 31 yards.
It's a guy that's been averaging over 20 points per game all season long. He's dropped down to 19.1 now. My fear here is that the back half of his schedule is considerably less friendly than the non-con play.
Yeah, that's what happens
Missouri,
when you play in the SEC.
Yeah, right. Missouri, who cares? But Florida, that's rough. UGA, that's rough. Mississippi, Auburn, So then he actually has a bye week 12. What is that? Why? Because fuck you.
What?
Will Shepard, week 12, bye. What it says.
Oh, and then week 13. Oh, because there's 13 weeks.
Week 13's got Tennessee.
Yeah.
But still, like, this is a guy that's probably like a starting wide receiver for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if you draft Vandy wide receivers at this point, they're starting wide receivers in September, and you just need to find another option before the rest. Yeah,
you got to figure it out. Figure it out in the back half.
Draft Shepard and McGowan and start them for the first 4 weeks while you pick up the Mountain West guys, right? And then move on to those guys.
All right. We got some Are They For Real tonight? Or are we going to do, we'll do this and then we'll do Dead or Alive. It kind of makes more sense to do Dead or Alive, right?
Sure. Whichever one you want.
Let's do Are They For Real? Because we get to talk about some guys that are fun to talk about here. I got some film for you guys, for those of you that are watching and not listening. And this is of one of my favorite players this year. Probably not an NFL guy, but man, has he been fun to roster. Jawar Jordan of Louisville has just been absolutely shredding defenses. I say maybe not a Devy guy because he ain't that big. 180, right?
Yeah, 5'10".
Not really the size we're looking for a Devy running back. I mean, obviously it happens, but also coming out of a weak program seems very unlikely that he has a strong NFL future. But hell, anything can happen.
Yeah, he's also in his 5th year, and his first 3 years he combined for like 250 yards on the ground. So,
yeah, and yet he is averaging 120 yards a game ish right now. 27.3 fantasy points, a touchdown and a half a game,
and 9.6 yards per attempt.
I mean, that is fun.
He's been a guy this season where he touches the ball and he scores. It doesn't matter if it's offense or it doesn't matter if it's rushing, receiving, or returns. I think he has a return touchdown as well this season.
I think he's stupid fast. Are you watching this film at all? He's like pulling away from DBs running down the field. That was a short highlight film, but it's a midway commercial. What do you got on Jarwar? Do you think he keeps this up the rest of the season?
I think 9.6 yards per carry is tough to keep up for anyone.
He's got some rough games coming up. He's got Notre Dame. He's got NC State, who are a very good defense. Notre Dame, clearly a good defense. Pitt, Duke, who we watched destroy Clemson. And then in weeks 12 and 13, he has got Miami, Florida, and Kentucky, probably two of the best defenses in college football this year.
Well, yeah, I'm not sold on Kentucky quite yet, but
you don't want to start your G5 guys and your weak players against them. I mean,
that's true.
They've shut some guys down. It's not like Louisville's got other threats to take attention away from Jordan. So he might be
though, Jack Plummer's been kind of good. The offense has kind of worked. They've passed the ball decently well. Like Jack Plummer, I think was like QB3 this week.
Are they 4-0 now? Yeah, they beat BC. They're 4-0 at Louisville.
Yeah, I don't think they're horrible.
Wins against Indiana and BC now, and then Georgia Tech.
Yeah.
So, all right. You got anything else on Jordan?
I don't think he keeps the efficiency just because the efficiency is insane, and I don't think he gets a bigger workload because he's so small. So I don't think this current scoring output is for real, but I think there's a lower scoring output, which isn't horrible, that we'll see.
I mean, dude's averaging like he could reduce his production by 30% and still be a starter on every fantasy team I have.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's got a lot of touchdowns too, which is
He's got some room for regression without really hurting you that much. So, all right. Got another guy here, kind of an interesting guy. Another one of those guys kind of been like looking at in the waiver wire, being like, it's not real, it's not real. And this guy is more because Antoine Wells' juice was supposed to come back and take his job. And you know what? Looks like maybe that ain't happening. What do you think about Xavier Legette?
Yeah, I think he's a guy for CFF. The question for me now is, does he have enough this season to make it in the NFL? He's a guy who's
go to the NFL or to
be a day 2 pick is really the question here. He's a guy who this is his 5th year where he's finally breaking out. In the past 4 years combined, he has 20 receptions, 423 yards, and 5 touchdowns. So like less production than he has in just this season. But he's on pace this season to have 100 catches, 2,000 yards. Like, I don't know if he keeps this up. There's probably something there, and he's like stupid fast for his size. He's 6'3", 227, and was clocked as the fastest player of this week according to RA Analytics, and clocked in the 23 range of miles per hour. It's like 23.1, I think, which is ridiculous. So he's big and fast. I think he'll impress scouts in that way, and he could have a ton of production this year.
Yeah, sounds like Senior Bowl guy, late day 2 pick, and an absolute stay away in draft, right?
Yeah, but if you pick him up in C2C, he could become a decently valuable trade away after he already propels you to CFF points.
Yes, I am with you. Definitely a guy that's going to raise in value. I feel like most of the people that you and I play C2C with are pretty sharp, but someone will give you something for him when he's a day 2 pick. Like a why the hell not kind of, maybe they give you a second round supplemental pick or, something kind of nice like that. And then this guy, for me, is the one that might, in fact, be for real. You want to talk us in?
Yeah, Cameron Ward, the much hyped FCS transfer last season, came in from Incarnate. I always have trouble with it because his name is Cameron Ward, and he played for Incarnate Word. But was a guy who came in as a transfer from the FCS and was like highly recruited. Like Ole Miss really wanted him. Lane Kiffin really wanted him pretty bad. There were a bunch of other Power 5 programs that offered him, and he ends up at Washington State because his former head coach was named offensive coordinator at Washington State. That didn't work out. The combination of those two, again, didn't work out. So they move on from them and bring in offensive coordinator Ben Arbuckle, and Cameron Ward has had a much better season this year than he did last year. Definitely seems like their connection in terms of OC to quarterback is better than the one that brought him to Washington State. Just this week against Oregon State, he led the team to a huge win, 74.8% completion on the season. And the biggest thing for Cam Ward last year in his first season at Washington State was he wasn't pushing the ball downfield, and when he wasn't doing it accurately. This season, he's 10 for 19 on throws of 20-plus air yards, which is very, very respectable, and has a 92.4 PFF grade on such throws. He only has 2 turnover-worthy throws on the season, according to PFF. He has 9 big-time throws, according to PFF. So he's definitely doing better this season than he was last year. He's attacking all the areas of the field. He's extending plays and finding open receivers. And I don't think there's that much of a question that the talent is there in terms of athleticism and arm strength. So if he's putting it together mentally, I think this is a Devy guy that we need to start talking about.
Yeah, I think it's fair. I mean, I've been watching some of the throws. He's made some nice, drop it in the bucket throws. Definitely seems, I'm watching, half a game of highlights here. Seems to be throwing his first read a lot. I haven't seen a lot of him going through progressions. Just doesn't mean that he ain't doing it. It just means that, like, in this little snippet, I haven't really seen it. So I wonder if this is, are they simplifying the reads for him and really, first reads getting the ball most of the time or what? But the arm talent seems to be real in terms of his ability to get it where it has to go. Seen some fun off angle stuff from him, flicking it out for 5-8 yards up the field. So intriguing at the very least is what I would say. And definitely a guy that, look, you could probably get a Cam Ward deal done right now, like from a team that's not competing. Like, hey, let me throw you this supplemental third for your win now CFF quarterback. And I bet you can get that done. Like, you can get that done for Dylan Gabriel or a guy like that.
Yeah. For now, I guess.
Or you throw you throw a freshman quarterback that hasn't started yet, Sam Levitt in the 5th, something like that. I think you can get these deals done affordably to the point that if he starts to get draft buzz, you're instantly going to have priced profit in.
Yeah. I think that's
all
smart.
Right. You can see the wheels turning. Kyle's going to go formulate some offers. All right.
I don't think there's very many non-contending teams with Cam Ward. He's averaging like 41 points a game.
Yeah, you'd think that, but I just pulled Dylan Gabriel off of a last place team's roster.
Yeah.
I think they actually had Ward too, and I figured Ward would be a little more expensive, and I didn't ask for it, but that was also, a couple of weeks ago. All right. Our most favorite, least favorite segment here, dead or alive.
I'm on it.
Take it out.
All right. Jarquez Hunter, the Auburn running back's first player to talk about this week. Been pretty unimpressive. Week 1 against Cal, 11 carries for 53 yards. Week 2 against Samford, 11 carries for 37 yards. This week against A&M, 9 carries for 53 yards, and has just 3 targets on the season. Obviously, this Auburn offense isn't moving the ball very well, so that's impacting Hunter's ability to score touchdowns and whatnot. And he's been kind of efficient. 11 for 53 is like 5 yards a carry. 9 for 53 is closer to 6. But I don't know what to make of Hunter.
It ain't good. I would say the hope for Devy is probably gone, right? Trying to pull up their team report. Where's the team? 159 teams. There we go. But God, yeah, I mean for CFF, he's been pure trash for you. Really, where I had him or acquired him, I was acquiring him as a Devy play. You'll be pleased to know he is PFF's worst rated running back on Auburn right now. Both of his teammates are outperforming him in terms of yards per attempt and PFF grade. He is doing well at yards after contact per attempt, 2.90. That's a good number. Mm-hmm. 9 missed tackles forced on 50 snaps, 31 attempts. That's pretty good, forcing a missed tackle 30% of his plays. And then the efficiency is kind of good. You say 9 for 53 against A&M, and I'm like,
yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Like, why didn't they give you 20 carries? So I don't know. I mean, you got to be real skeptical about him. Breakaway percentage, or is that the yards? You said the BAY percentage.
He had 2 carries of 15 yards this week against A&M.
Yeah. Fewer targets than Damari Alston. Wonder too if he was in the doghouse. Maybe he's just not fully out of the doghouse too. But you'd have to think they want to win games at some point, and they should play their best players.
Yeah, not a lot of talent on this team, So he's always kind of been a low usage, high efficiency guy, and maybe that's just what he is.
Would you trade him away for a 9th round supplemental right now?
No. But I'm stubborn.
Yeah. All right. Marquez Cooper, the aforementioned Ball State running back, who has been either playing good defenses, one good game, and then a bad game this week, and a game that we thought he was going to be good. What do you think about Cooper?
He played 10 snaps against Georgia Southern this week.
Yeah, what's up? Was that just game script, you think?
It's possible. He's played 26 against Indiana State. Is he like a horrific pass blocker?
That's what I was thinking. He's little, right? Cooper's little.
5'8", 184. Is this just to the point where they cannot have him on the field for passing plays?
Could be, man.
Because that's bad.
It's bad. It's real
like
bad.
If they can't put you on the field for passing plays at all, then the defense is going to know that you're running the ball when you're on the field, right? Like, he has 58 attempts on 72 snaps. That's like 80-something% of the time he's on the field, he's getting a rush attempt. I don't know. I think defenses are going to key in on that if I can figure it out, just looking at the stat sheet.
Yeah. All right. So, Cooper, are you dropping him for a waiver player this week?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, considering the waiver players we have.
Yeah. All right. EJ Warner, Temple quarterback, a guy we were both high on because he just went off at the end of last year, admittedly against some inferior competition, but he doesn't have a strong schedule ahead of him this year either, and hasn't played great teams except this past week where he got stymied by Miami.
Rutgers in week 2 is still outmatching Temple.
Yeah, but Norfolk.
Yeah.
1 touchdown against Norfolk, 238 yards. Akron, 292 yards. That was actually his best game was against Akron, a couple of touchdowns. Rutgers isn't very good still. I mean, yes,
they're still
physically
better than
Temple. But all right, would you drop him for a desirable CFF asset this week? He's your worst player on your team right now. You're dropping him?
Yeah. I mean, the answer to that is almost always yes. I'm always churning, but I don't know that he's been horrible. Um, there are
All right,
things
so
to
let me
like.
ask you
Here, a
this.
9.5 yard A dot, 6.4 yards per attempt isn't awful.
Yeah, it's
He's
awful.
so
Terrible. If
I've
you're
seen
under
worse.
7 yards per attempt as a quarterback, it's bad.
I've seen worse. He wasn't horrible against Akron, like you said. He wasn't. I don't think he was horrible against Norfolk. I think they
You
just
keeping
throw.
him thinking he's going to have startable CFF games on the backside, or do you think he's got Devy value?
He's still a true sophomore, right?
Yeah.
I think in C2C, I'd keep him.
Are you? Would you drop him to pick up the kid that broke out this week, Reisner?
Rainer, 100%. Yeah,
Rainer.
yeah.
Yeah. All right. Okay, moving on. A couple of guys that we had a conversation about this past week because we were involved in a trade with them. Shelton Sampson, Jury, and Dickey. How you feeling about their Devy value, Kyle?
Hey, we kind of had this conversation on Thursday.
Are you 100% out on them for Devy?
Samson, I think I'm like 75% out on. Just because he was a little lower rated, and like we talked about on Thursday, he's very similar to Brian Thomas, and Brian Thomas just being good is not going to get him on the field this year. And I'm a pretty strong believer that you need to get on the field as a freshman.
Yeah.
And then
But
during
on the field and drop practice is maybe even worse.
and Jurian Dickey, I'm probably only at like 40% for Dickey. I mean, this Oregon team is capable of blowing out probably like 2 or 3 more teams on their schedule. Did he record a stat this week? Actually, because I was thinking about most of my thoughts.
I was thinking of it. That's why I threw him back on because both of these teams were involved in blowouts this week. Oregon ran up 70 points against Colorado and didn't play Dickey. They did play the freshman tight end, and that's what made me be like, you're playing
he didn't even get a snap.
Didn't even get a snap. Which I'm like, is there an injury concern? Is he hurt? Like, is there something else going on?
The thing about Dickey as a prospect the entire time was that he was raw.
I don't know, dude. He's got some really nice routes on some of his film.
He's an insane fucking athlete. Like, he's AJ Brown if he hits, but I thought he was raw as a high schooler, and I think that was pretty consensus. I don't know. I don't see the issue with Oregon and Dickey is that there's so many guys on that team. Like Gary Bryant Jr., Trayshawn Holden, Tez Johnson, Chris Hudson. Like, all these guys are fine players. Like, they're all going to get on the field if somebody were to get hurt before Dickey is.
Yeah.
But, like, if Brian Thomas went down for LSU, there's a decent chance that Sheldon Sampson is seeing 20 snaps.
Yeah. Okay. Neon Williams. You dropping him if he's on your roster?
And C2C?
Yeah.
Yeah. He should have went last year. Should have went pro.
Yeah. Yeah, he would have got day 3 cap at least.
Yeah. He's in what, like his 6th season now?
I thought it was his 4th season. He was a junior last year.
Yeah, okay, you're right. Yeah. Shoot. There's a case to hold him. Like, Trey Henderson's probably gone. I think Chip Trayanum is out of eligibility. So the case is he's like what, Brian Robinson in his 5th year at Ohio State. He just takes over all the work as the oldest guy on the team, and you can write that narrative.
Yeah. So you're not dropping him for a waiver claim?
I think it depends on how you felt about him before. I don't think you need. I do think there's a possibility at value next year. If you think he's good, then you should hold him.
Thought he was a rotational back for the NFL. I think he's good at some things.
Yeah,
As good as some things as some other guys, you know.
Yeah, but like if you think he's good, then you think he's probably the RB1 for Ohio State next year, right? Like
I don't know though, because I think
Evan
Pryor's decent, and then the other kid that came in last year, Hayden, right?
I don't know. I think they'd lean on the 5th-year guy before they to those two, even as good as they are. And I bet one of them transfers.
Right. Jaden Blue, sophomore running back, Texas, Longhorns, had some height, 6 foot, 190 pounds. In a blowout this week, got 3 carries for 17 yards.
He's dead and has been since sometime last year.
He started this season with 10 carries, 55 yards.
Against Rice. They wanted to
on
see
the field,
what they had.
Recording stats. Yeah. All right. EJ Smith. What the hell do we do with EJ Smith?
Good question.
He's been nothing but efficient when he touches the ball, and then didn't play this week.
3 snaps. He has 37 snaps on the season. That's like 9 snaps a game. Yeah, that's very bad.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
Average 10 yards a carry against USC. Average 7.9 against Sacramento State. And then
7.1 on the season. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like there's got to be more to the story, but at this point, for Devy, he's a 4th-year player. He had to dominate this year.
Yeah, it's very possible that injuries have just ruined his career. Which
happens.
It's quite unfortunate.
All right. Doing waivers?
Let's do waivers. I like mine a whole lot more than yours. You have some that made me ask why you put them there, honestly.
Well, in your face. That's why I put them there. Your face. So I threw out some freshmen that I think are under-owned, that if you're not competing, I think you can throw on your roster and probably have a nice piece for next year. Just kind of sorting before we started is where some of those guys came from. But I think Luke Haas, if you need a tight end, is an obvious pickup. I think Jalen Resner is an obvious pick. Jalen Rayner is an obvious pickup. Pretty much
that's why.
No matter what.
Yeah. Yeah. I was confused because you wrote Resner on the show sheet, and I thought that was somebody entirely different. And I was like, who are you talking about?
I thought maybe I misread what you had written as that, and then I was really confused. Yeah, I'm also tired. I think Eric Singleton has been kind of quietly stacking stats at Georgia Tech. And as a true freshman, and some of his film's been pretty nice too. He again is that smaller guy. I wouldn't throw a ton of money at him because again, is he getting snaps because there's no one else? Does he have an NFL upside? Those are big questions. But he's averaging like 15 points per game or something as a true freshman, which is pretty interesting to me. And some of it against pretty decent teams, Wake, Mississippi. So yeah, averaging 15.8 points per game, just about 62 yards, and touchdown a game. For me, regardless of size, that's worth paying attention to, just to see what's going to happen. A couple of G5 guys that have recorded some significant stats on high volume passing offenses, Easton Mesner and Jalen Moss. Mesner from Western Kentucky and Moss from, where's Mikey Keene? Is that Boise?
Fresno
State. Both have had more than one 20-point game this season. So are you going to get that every week? No, but both of those teams have seniors. as their wide receiver ones. There's going to be a void next year. We likely think the same coaching staffs are back. Definitely be interested to see if the young guys can step up. And then 3 other freshmen I'm super interested in.
There's a void at quarterback for both those teams next year too, isn't there?
Mikey Keene will be back.
Reed is gone.
Reed is gone, but they'll get a guy.
Hopefully, yeah.
Yeah, they'll get a guy. And then I got 3 freshmen that are super interesting. Nick Anderson for Oklahoma. Again, these are Devy plays, or these are like next year, CFF Dynasty plays. But Nick Singleton
Anderson.
is trying to Nick Anderson. I was like, why can't I find him? Nick Anderson has been going off, not getting volume, more or less playing mop-up duty. Scoring touchdowns, catching deep bombs, torching defensive backs at Tulsa. So, he's a guy that's probably broken his year 1-0, had a decent pedigree. I think he was like a low 4-star, has some size, some NFL type size. I don't know if he's fast or not, but he's certainly putting up stats that should get him on your radar. Kevin Concepcion, we talked about earlier. Go ahead.
Is anyone gone from Oklahoma after this year? I mean, Drake Stoops is gone, 100%. But Farouk probably still on the roster. Andrew Anthony probably still on the roster. Yeah, I don't know how these freshmen are going to have to elevate themselves in the spring as sophomores to jump those 2.
Feasible,
which is possible.
Like a Farouk's there for his 4th year and he has barely done anything. Like, you're telling me a kid with NFL talent can't just seize that job? That's what you're betting on. You're making cheap bets now that these guys are going to get the job and really explode in value after that. Right? Yeah.
We definitely have a lot of faith in the quarterback situation moving forward with Jackson.
Yeah. Someone's going to go off there, and I don't think it's Farouk. Anderson had a really good game this week. Again, he's had a couple of them, so maybe he's the guy there, but I don't know. You got time. If Anderson puts up 600 yards next year and then goes off as a junior, that's still an NFL profile. And Kevin Concepcion, I think, is pretty much the same. I feel the same way about him as I do about Singleton. We don't know if he's getting the work because there's no one there or if he really is a high-level player. It's the same size, same kind of production. He has had like a big game against UVA, 115 yards and 2 tutties from this week. So maybe he has more upside in the short term, some utility if you're a win now roster. And then the last guy
he can just be a multi-year CFF guy, and that makes him worth it.
Yeah, totally makes him worth it. Because again, probably more expensive this week after that breakout game, but still probably not a guy you got to throw $30 at. And then Tyler Brown. Problem with Tyler Brown from Clemson is that he's probably behind Antonio Williams when Antonio Williams is healthy, but 2 games in a row now has looked real good. It's Florida Atlantic. He had 3 catches, 49 yards, but 2 tutties. This week kind of took a featured role for Clemson against Florida State. 6 targets, 5 catches, 84 yards. He looked good, man. Like laid out to get some balls, was getting open, creating separation against much older, much more experienced defensive backs. I do think Antonio Williams is very good. I do think they're basically the same guy. So unless Clemson's going to put one of them, at Z and one of them at Y, I don't see how Tyler Brown coexists with a healthy Antonio Williams this year and is productive. But again,
they
having a good
Adam
game.
Randall.
I don't. Yeah. Well, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, I don't think Adam Randall's it at this point. I don't know. Maybe he just needs another year of getting healthy, but hadn't looked impressive on anything I've watched from him. You know who looked impressive? While I'm talking Clemson, Bo Collins, I thought looked real good in the game I cut up. Actually pretty explosive. So I think he's the big man. Maybe they throw these 2 guys out there, bring in Randall for the for a big package at the goal line. But so I think I just wanted to highlight some guys, more of a Devy. You're not winning now. You're trading away some pieces. These would be some of the guys that I'm looking to add for future purposes. And I think Kyle covered the other end of it pretty well. So
I like Tyler Brown a lot. He's a guy who, in the leagues where I have one waiver claim left for the season, I'm using it on Tyler Brown. Maybe that's incorrect, but that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, love it.
In terms of CFF guys, I'll take care of this, and I do think there's probably one on here that has some NFL upside, and I'm going to go off script. At quarterback, we talked about Jalen Raynor. I think he is your guy if you're looking for a quarterback. Like 100% your guy. Zion Chris is still available in 95% of leagues, so I think he's your second option as another guy who can be a long-term CFF asset with a ton of speed and a ton of rushing ability at the G5 level. So I think Raynor and then Chris at quarterback. Jace Bauer took over for Burt Emanuel at Central Michigan this week and was really freaking good. He had like 224 yards and a passing touchdown in the air and then scored 4 rushing touchdowns. Apparently, Emanuel is like ill, but I don't know. He led him to an upset over Southern Alabama, so maybe it's Bauer going into week 5. I think that's a storyline to watch. I think the Central Michigan quarterback is worth something because they let that guy run and they let that guy run at the goal line. So watching that play out and trying to get the winner. DJ Giddens, who we talked about early on, had 61.3 fantasy points this week, rostered in just 27% of leagues. I think he's a priority add. I think he's a guy who can play in the NFL at some point down the line. So super excited about him in C2C and looking up for CFF. And the other two CFF guys that are important this week. Emmanuel Michel, the fullback, superback, running back at Air Force, seems to have taken the Brad Roberts role, which if you're familiar with Brad Roberts, that's like a 30 points per game type of role. 28 attempts in week 3, 33 attempts in week 4, averaging like 120 yards, 3 touchdowns in both those performances. He's not a guy who's going to catch a pass probably ever, but he's going to get 30 touches on the ground game every week if he holds onto this role. So I think Michelle is a very valuable CFF piece, and that's Michelle like Sony Michel, Michel. And then we also talked about this guy, Penny Boone, the Toledo running back. Super excited about him going forward for CFF. Like I mentioned before, 13 attempts in week 3, 24 attempts in week 4, 123 yards, and then 211 yards. This is a Toledo team that likes to run the ball, and they'll run the ball a lot during MAC-tion, and MAC defenses won't be able to stop them, especially because Penny Boone is just so much bigger and faster than these MAC players. These poor MAC players gonna have to try Boone's to tackle Penny Boone.
Boone's like 230 pounds and runs like a 4.6. She's like a freight train, you know.
And then a freshman that I'm surprised you didn't bring up because he's a freshman, and you seem to love freshmen. Parker Jenkins, the Houston running back, put 31.1 fantasy points on the board this week against Sam Houston, had 20 attempts for 105 yards and 3 touchdowns, added 2 receptions on top of that. Tony Mathis, the presumed starter for Houston, has been out for 2 weeks now. So Parker Jenkins is, benefiting from that. But I think it's going to be hard to put a guy like this back into the bottle. And Dana Holgerson has proven in the past that he doesn't really care about seniority in the running back room. I mean, Alton McCaskill had like an insane freshman season at Houston 2 seasons ago, Parker Jenkins was a higher rated recruit than McCaskill, and McCaskill is a highly rated recruit. They're both like 4 stars. So I think Jenkins can take this role going forward. And Donovan Smith really isn't going to do anything through the passing game. So why not run the ball and why not hand it to this freshman who's been impressive? So I think Parker Jenkins is a very good pickup this week, rostered in just 6% of Fantrax leagues.
It's actually rostered in one of my leagues already.
Yeah, I mean, he was a 4-star, so I guess if you have like a taxi in your college side, I'd have him.
No, that's one of the open waiver leagues. It's boggling me.
Oh, yeah, interesting. Elijah Gillum, the Fresno State running back, is still only rostered in 18% of leagues. I think he's a pretty good pickup, 29.4 fantasy points this week. I think he'll eat during Mountain West competition. Do I have any other running backs? Just want to do this by position because I have quite a few guys, but I think that's all I got for the running back position. Michelle's a big pickup for CFF, especially if you're playing CFF only. I'd be all over him. Then at wide receiver, I think the big one for me this week in terms of like new guys that we haven't talked about is Josh Kelly, the Washington State wide receiver. As we mentioned, he's been pretty solid, 22.7 in week 1, 18.7 in week 3, and then 41.9 this week after Lincoln Victor went down. I think his upside's very high with Victor out, and we'll see how long that will last. I think the issue here is that Washington State's on a bye this week, so there's a very real possibility that Lincoln Victor is back after the bye. But I think Josh Kelly is probably worth rostering. Actually, definitely worth rostering, even with Victor healthy. So I would snag him if you can. Maybe don't put everything on him because I think some people might. I think you'd be benefiting to not do that because, like we said, Victor will probably be back. Malik Washington, the UVA wide receiver we talked about, the connection is there with Calandria. 13 targets in 2 straight weeks. I think you have to spend for him. I think that's worth it. He's only rostered in 17% of leagues right now. I think he's the wide receiver you want this week. Malik Washington is. Excited to see how he can do the rest of the season. You already mentioned Concepcion. I think that's a big one as well. Other than that, Naeem Simmons went off this week for USF. He had 8 targets for 8 receptions for 272 yards and a touchdown. That's insanity. That's like 20 yards a catch, isn't it?
Yeah, I missed the math.
No, that's 864. That is like 30 yards a catch, 34 yards a catch.
Nolan Simmons?
Naeem Simmons.
Naeem.
USF.
Yes, that's over 30 yards a catch, dude. It's like 30,
34. It's
32,
34, exactly. Yeah. And a touchdown.
Fantrax tells me 34.0.
Yeah. He's only rostered in 2% of leagues. I think there's value in having USF's wide receiver 1. Like, this is the same offensive system that produced Cedric Tillman and Jalen Hyatt at Tennessee. It's hard to trust that this is actually going to be Simmons as the wide receiver 1 going forward. I mean, 4, 5, and 7 targets before this week. Only still just 8 targets this week. Just super fucking efficient.
Well, 7 targets last week against Alabama.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like you got to pick him up at this point. I mean,
if you got the spot, he's probably the last one of the wide receivers you've talked about that I'm picking up. I'm definitely picking up Kelly and or Washington first.
Yes.
Or Concepcion, Tyler Brown, depending on my team.
Yeah. But I mean, it's definitely like a pickup. Wait a week, see if you can do something again, and then maybe you can just drop him again next week. Yeah.
Cool, man. Love it. You got anything else?
That's all I got. I don't think. Well, tight end, obviously, Lucasi. I think you mentioned him. That's really the one guy. Jared Wiley is still only rostered in 27% of leagues. He's been pretty good.
Game. Like that fab I spent week 1 in that limited leagues finally paying off.
Finally paying off. Yeah.
Tough to trust these tight ends with that target pattern, though.
It's
6,
super tough.
4, 6. Then you start him next week, and he gets the 2 targets again, inevitably.
Yeah, you got like 4 tight ends now, maybe, that you can trust every week, and even then, those guys throw up some duds occasionally.
Yeah, Jatavian in a non-tight end premium league is averaging less than 10 points right now.
I don't think that's correct, but there's a lot to it to do sake.
In a non-tight end premium. So here's a name for you at tight end. Bryce DeMoose, UAB Blazers. He's had 2 games with 8 targets so far this season. He's actually in the top 20 of points per game for tight ends and is just unrostered everywhere.
Yeah, tight end 15. Rostered in 2%.
Holden Willis went off this week, but that's tough to trust. What else? Bartholomew is unrostered in a lot of places. He's been okay.
He's like a floor play. He's the ultimate floor play. I have him like everywhere. You can just
I'm starting him
get
everywhere.
8 points. Yeah, like 8 tight end points. You should have gotten Holker.
So the places I'm playing Bartholomew is where Gadsden and Lachey are both hurt, which is unfortunately like 30% of my competing teams.
Dominic Mazzotti is a guy that we talked about in the offseason at San Jose State. Had a rough start to the season. It's been kind of dropped in some places. He's was drafted in 12% of leagues. Right now he's only rostered in 7. So had a rough 2 weeks to start the season, 3 targets and then 1 target against Cal Poly. But in the last 2 weeks, he's had 6 targets against Toledo and 7 targets against Air Force. Turned that into 39 yards and a touchdown and then 60 yards this week. So I think that's a guy worth watching.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Okay, I think that is plenty to think about. What do you think?
Yeah. I can keep giving you crappy tight ends, but I don't think anyone wants that.
I think I am good. Look, if this is helpful for you guys, make sure you like, subscribe wherever you're listening to this. Do the follow thing. Follow us. Follow Kyle at Kale_fantasy. Me at EK Baller. And definitely like the reviews, the subs to the YouTube channel. That's how you can help us if we're helping you. That's it. That's what I've got.
That's what he's got.
That's what I got. You got any parting words of wisdom, Kyle?
Trade me your good players.
Trade me your good players. Devy Dose out.